The Anglo-Norman period marked the end of Germanic Saxon rule in England. On 14th October 1066 AD, William the Conqueror of France won the Battle of Hastings and became the first Norman king of England. That is the first French king of England. That's why we call this Battle of Hastings as Norman Conquest, because after this battle with the English people, the French king William the Conqueror, who came from Normandy, a place in France, captured England and became its king. The Norman conquest brought significant changes to English literature and English language. Let us discuss those changes that were brought in England after the Norman conquest. First is, England became a trilingual country during the Anglo-Norman period. Norman French became the language of the court. Since the king was French, Latin remained the language used by educated clergy who spoke and wrote in Latin, and English belonged to the common masses. Second change was French literature replaced the heroic poetry of the Anglo-Saxon period, and alliterative verses that were so particular and popular to the Germanic people during the Anglo-Saxon period were now not in use. This was the period of courtly romances, that is, court poetry and chivalry like the poems of Sidney and Spenser later on were popular. The English language that was still now influenced by the Germanic tribes was significantly affected in spellings, literary expressions, and vocabulary by Norman French. So basically, the Anglo-Saxon language, style, poetry, and forms were all replaced by Norman French styles. Now let us discuss the literature of the Anglo-Norman period. Some of the key authors and their works during the Anglo-Norman period were: the first is Geoffrey of Monmouth. He wrote the history of the kings of Britain in 1136. Second was Wace's Roman de Brut, written in 1155, and then the Songs of Roland, the Battle of Hastings, the Life of Saint Audrey, Layman's Brut, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, Cursor Mundi, the Owl and the Nightingale, Land of Cockaigne. So that was all about the Anglo-Norman period, its historical background, literature, and major changes that led to its formation. And with this, I culminate the entire medieval period for you. But before that, let's recapitulate the medieval period once again. The medieval period in English literature spans from the 5th century to the 15th century, encompassing Old English, which lasted from 5th century to 11th century AD. Then it also involves poetry like the epic poetry like the Beowulf, Anglo-Saxon chronicles, Caedmon's hymns, Christian influences that were major part of this time period. The Middle English came in during the periods 11th century to 15th century, and the important developments that happened during this period were: first, the Norman Conquest that happened in 1066, which brought the French influence to England. There was an emergence of vernacular languages. Major works that were popular during this period were Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. The key features of the medieval ages were: first, Christianity's impact on literature; second, feudalism and chivalry; third, oral tradition and manuscript culture; fourth, influence of Latin, French, and Celtic languages. Fifth was the development of allegory, symbolism, and mythology into the literature of this period. The major genres or the kind of poetry that was being written during this period was the epic poetry, the epic romances, allegory, etc. A few important texts worth remembering from this period are Beowulf, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, the Arthurian legends, and the likes. I hope you have understood the gist of the medieval ages with this video, and I would advise you to attempt the quiz or the questions at the end of this chapter so that you can understand the medieval ages better and be prepared for any kind of questions that come to you from this period in your examination. Thank you, and let's move on to the next video, that is the age of Chaucer.